Introducing Heston Blumenthal, a celebrity chef. Heston is an English chef. He is the owner of The Fat Duck, which was voted the best restaurant in the world in 2005. He has 3 children, 24-year-old Jack, 22-year-old Jessie, and 22-year-old Joy. Now, tell me, Heston, where does your interest in food come from? Where did you grow up?
I didn't grow up in the best time for food. The 70s were brilliant in art and music and acting and photography and fashion for England, but not food. I lived in Egware Road in West London. But in 1982, my dad had a good year at work and decided to take us to France. There we went to the l'Ost de Blumenthal. It was the first time I've ever been to a Michelin-starred restaurant. The experience was simply amazing. After that, I became obsessed with food.
So, what training have you had?
Training? What training? I'm afraid I've been self-taught in the areas of cooking.
Well, how many years have you been involved in working with food? Can you give me a few examples of your experiences?
Well, I worked 120 hours a week for 8 years. That's 20 to 22 hours a day, every day. And 1 week I only got 15 hours sleep. In 1995, I converted this rundown pub into the Fat Duck. It had the worst kit and the smallest space I could have asked for. But 3 years after opening doors, the Fat Duck gained its first Michelin star. I've also written a few books.
Oh, very good. Well, what food cultures do you prefer, Heston? And what clientele do you prefer to cook for?
Can science be considered a food culture? Well, the classic recipes with dishes were really frustrating. They rarely explain why dishes were made that way, and I've often given bad advice. Breaking point came in 1999 when I tried to cook green vegetables. The water had to be kept boiling, using lots of salt to keep the green colour. But the Fat Duck had a pressure problem. So if I tried this cooking method the proper way, then the water would come off boil. So I had to cook vegetables in batches of 8. Clearly this wasn't going to work, so I looked for science for answers. I found out salt wasn't needed to keep the green colour. After that, I kept exploring the worlds of food and gastronomy using science. I wondered what I might do with a rotary evaporator, or a vacuum desiccator, or a temperature-controlled water bath, and so on. I would go to the flavour laboratory and test as many flavour molecules as I could. I tried using scented dry ice to intensify flavouring too.
Dry ice. Well, who or what inspires you with your cooking, Heston?
Harold McGree defined my style of cooking, but at the Fat Duck I can be inspired by anything I see, hear, smell, taste or touch.
Yes, but what is your philosophy about food?
To me, food is as much about the moment, the occasion, the location, and the company as it is about the taste. You think about some of the most memorable meals you've had. The food will be good, but it'll be often locating a mental memory, and taste is inexorably linked to all the other senses and memory. So ultimately, it's all about taste. A meal is, no matter where you are, who you're with, how much time you have, what you're having, or what the setting is, a social event.
Yes, a social event. Now, what about your recipes, Heston? Do you have any favourites?
Well, I love to create food that appeals to all the senses using science. I've recently completed a new menu for the Fat Duck. One of the popular starters is the nitro poached cocktails. This is a favourite because it's the same as all the other cocktails around the world, but different. Another thing on the Fat Duck menu is a rabbit broth, which I managed to get hot on one side and cold on the other. There's the sound of a sea, which is a dish of sashimi with seaweed notes, eaten while listening to a pair of headphones that play the sound of crashing waves and children playing. One of the most famous is snail porridge, which generated a lot of fuss.
I think I'll stick with the sashimi. Now, can you pose for a photo, Heston?
Sure.
Now, Heston, if I was working in your kitchen, what advice would you give me about preparing, cooking, or plating food?
I'll give you 4 tips. For a faultless boiled egg, just don't boil it. Instead, put all the eggs in the smallest fitting pot, pour tap water on top, and then heat it on max power until it boils, and immediately take it off the heat and let it sit for 6 minutes. This would be a perfect boiled egg. To make the tastiest chicken stock, get some chicken wings, chop them up, and put them in a roasting tray with a little bit of oil. Then dust the chicken pieces with some skim milk powder. You can add some carrots and onions as well, then roast them to make the stock. This will taste delicious. Flip for a restaurant quality steak. First have the steak at room temperature with the pan smoking hot, as you can see. Use just enough oil to cover the cracks and crevices in the pan. Then salt the steak and put it on the pan so it falls away from you. This will stop the oil from splashing. Then flip it every 15 seconds to give the steak a well-cooked brown outside. That's just perfect in the middle. When it's cooked, set it on a cake rack to cool for 5 minutes. If you put it on a plate, that will sandwich the heat. You can get really smooth truffles in an instant. Break 60% of the chocolate over a pan at medium heat to melt it. When it's melted, add the cream. Use the same amount of each, but this is the important bit. Use 1/3 of the cream at the time. This will keep the thing smooth. Then combine it with the chocolate. Repeat until all the cream's gone, then pop it in the fridge. To form the truffle, use a little spoon to get a ball of mixture, then roll it with your fingers. Serve back at room temperature.